Hi. Every day in the Trump administration is a new day, that's for sure. That is for sure.
So you did get the highest number of votes in Texas. So
From Vigilant Fox.
But when you were talking
okay, then you don't have to say anything more, Joe.
I got to say this.
No, don't say anything more.
No,
don't qualify it by saying,
no, I'm
I
not
got
gonna,
the highest number of votes.
You did.
In the
you
history
did. I'm moving
of
on.
Texas.
I'm moving on.
All right, thank you, Vigilant Fox, for clipping that over at the Squawk Box on CNBC. So that's Donald Trump saying, look, that's it. I got the highest number of votes, which he did. And that's it. We don't have to talk about it anymore. What don't you understand? Actually, it is a little bit more complicated than that. And I'm actually not disagreeing with the president here. Without a doubt, the House of Representatives is badly gerrymandered and badly disadvantages Republican voters and other groups that are underrepresented since the redistricting effort after following the 2020 census. And we'll talk about that more. You're watching Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. Don't forget, if you like the videos, to like them and subscribe. I am your host, Rich Barris, the People's Pundit. The best place to follow us, even though we are everywhere, the best place is right here on Locals, peoplespundit.locals.com, peoplespundit.locals.com. All right. Real quick, before we get into the redistricting effort, which of course we're going to spend most of the show on, for those who don't know it, by the way, somebody just texted me and said, looking nice and sun-kissed. Little bit, brother, little bit. Got out of there just in the nick of time. This is normally what I look like, but I've been stuck in an office. How long has it been since Donald Trump came down the escalator? I've been stuck in an office since Donald John Trump came down an escalator to run for the presidency or first the Republican nomination. And I literally lost the pigment on my skin, guys. The melanin, whatever the hell it's called. It altered my DNA being stuck in an office. All right. So, yeah, a little bit. And I come back to life. I wish my good friend Sean Parnell was around to see it, but he is in a pit of vipers, a den of thieves, known as Washington, D.C. All right, now I'll catch you up to speed on what's going on with the redistricting efforts. You guys may have seen Alex and I on War Room a couple of weeks ago before this story became a big story. Bannon had the guy on who's literally responsible for carving or spotting the areas. And obviously works for, well, maybe not obvious to you guys. He was Elise Stefanik's right-hand guy, and he's one of the smart ones. And he saw this a mile away, and Republicans need to be forced into doing things that benefit them and their voters. That's who they are. That's why, despite winning elections and despite winning culture wars even in recent decade, they are losing the overall war for the soul of the country. And I think that's something I want to get off a little bit. I want to get off topic just in the beginning. We'll talk mostly about redistricting, but in the beginning of the show here, I just want to address something which obviously has been huge, which has been the Epstein situation. Epstein himself, not a huge issue, right? But is a proxy. I think everybody can admit now I was right. All right, are we done now with the cheerleading and the clapping of the seal clapping and the Are we done now? Now because you stuck your head in the sand and chose to act like a bunch of like simpleton sycophants, you allowed the media to flank you. I mean, that's what you did by sitting there and, doing what you did during Robert Mueller. Some of you them weren't even around during the first Trump administration. They just pop up like whack-a-frauds on X every damn year. But because they did like the Bill Mitchell shuffle, because Bill Mitchell was notorious in the first administration for acting like this, a big Trump cheerleader. By the way, he supported DeSantis in the primary and abandoned Trump. He did the same thing. Oh, Robert Mueller is this really, it's 4D chess, guys. Trust the plan, trust the plan. Trust Fauci, trust Trump, trust Pence, trust the plan. I mean, it's ludicrous. I don't understand, how people think that burying their head in the sand makes things go away. It doesn't in real life, and it doesn't in politics. All right, you have to recognize things just like any other problem, from addiction to financial to political. When you have a problem, you must recognize it first in order to address it and fix it. But too much time went by, and the Epstein situation was not recognized for what it was, which was a proxy issue to hold the ruling class accountable. A key promise Donald Trump obviously made to do things different, to be different. And there was sprinkled in there with those mistakes were a bunch of bigger ones, like attacking your own supporters and having your people who want access. And that's how it goes in the Trump administration, and every administration, but certainly with Trump. In MAGA world, which is the political MAGA world, is filled with grifters. The country MAGA world is not, the actual voter. But in politics, it's filled with grifters, and they're all trying to get on the good side of the president, not because they think that telling the truth is the most important thing, but because they want to gain favored status with the king, and that's not who I am, and that's not who I'm ever going to be. I've survived this long. I survived the first Trump administration and came out on the right side of things. I will do the same here again. That's my guiding star. If you're looking for a sycophant, you could have your choice of social media influencers. I'm not. I'm a public opinion pollster, and I represent people's opinions that don't get shined through with all of the noise. By the way, those people are the ones who elected Donald Trump, which is how we have been able to take the pulse of the country in a way that other pollsters have not. All right. So this Epstein thing, I'm not saying, that it can't be fixed. It can't be addressed. And in fact, there will be an attempt to do that this weekend when everybody meets at JD Vance's and they discuss what the hell do we do now. A big problem, and I could play another clip from that Squawk Box interview, a big problem in the administration that will determine whether or not this meeting is successful and bears any fruit, is that they're being told by their people rosier picture than is real. All right. So you have them, and this is the saddest part about this whole situation. You have the media who latched onto it, and now their polls are exaggerating real trends. Now, Trump didn't slip 40, 50 points with young voters, folks, but he did slip. Now you can rest assured that he left that spot, that blind spot open, that they're going to drive a Mack truck through it. And that's what they're doing with their, fake polls coming out. And they are fake. They're cooked. There's no way you could cook Donald Trump to 40%. There's no way you could find Donald Trump around 40%, 37%. You just can't. I mean, you have to cook your numbers in order to do that. So when Mark Halpern and others take issue with me and Mark and others saying that the polls are fake, I don't really give a shit. The polls are fake. They're faking the numbers. All right. You can't do it. You'll get them at like -3. That's it. But it's still bad because you've lost the majority. And the question is whether or not you'll be able to do something that can, like this meeting, what will bear fruit here from this, what kind of fruit, harvested from this meeting that can start putting them on the right course. Because there are some groups that you probably have lost forever. And the question is, you already had this monumental task of making sure that these voters who don't ever vote in midterms actually vote. And in the future, your task was to make sure that these voters who voted for Donald Trump and left their spaces blank for Congress, or voted for a Democrat for Congress or Senate, because that happened everywhere. I mean, look at the map. How Republicans underperformed Donald Trump, especially in the House, which is obviously what we're all centered on, because the Senate map is favorable still to Republicans, even though they can blow it. If you think for a second they can't have a bad election and lose control, you're wrong. It's hard, but it is possible. And that being all said, they're being told something that is the far end of the spectrum, from their pollster. It's not an S, it's pollster. Well, there's two of them, but they're being told that everything is rosy and bright. When Donald Trump goes on Squawk Box and tells him that my number's at 60%, he's not talking about Republicans. He's being told that his numbers are extremely strong, not with Republicans where he's being told they're 95% or more, which is not true. He overall is being told that his poll numbers are good, really good. And that's not true. It's simply not true. So you have two very extreme ends of the spectrum, and then you have people like me and a select few others, and we all know who they are, that are telling the honest truth, which is that they're not good. They're not egregious or horrible the way that Quinnipiac or some of these other pollsters are showing. They're not bad like that, but they're bad. And the question, and what makes it even worse is that you have to motivate these people who are so very pissed at you right now. And the Epstein issue had a big deal in that. I don't know that it would have had as much of an impact as it did if it wasn't for the bombing of Iran, which primed people for being pissed off. And guys, if you go back to our early spring polling, you can actually see it. People were like, look, I like what he's doing. Things are going well. We're positive a little bit. We're positive here, maybe 51, 49, 51, 48, 49, 46, in that kind of area, even down to like approved +1 in the public polling project before he took a dive. But they were already expressing that they felt that he wasn't on message and that he wasn't paying enough attention to the things they actually cared about, which was big accountability and big radical change on the economy. Things were starting to get better before Israel drug us into taking military action against another country, which Trump went along with because he's friends with Netanyahu. That was already a pivot point where it could have gotten better because people were beginning to tell us, hey, look, I'm not seeing all of the things that they tried to panic us over with tariffs, all of the spiking in prices. I'm not really seeing that. I am seeing things that are actually starting to get better, right? And the economic confidence index showed that. We've been over this before. Before the action in the Middle East, which is a major red flag to these groups that vote for Donald Trump but don't vote for other Republicans. That was a major red flag for them, especially those who already lived during the first Trump administration or paid attention during the first Trump administration. And they soured. And then the Epstein thing came and it just made it worse. And then his own posts made it worse, right? So, I mean, those things made headlines everywhere. Anyway, now this is what those of us who are warning about how it was being handled, this is what those of us were worried about. Not that it was ever going to come out that Donald Trump did anything with Jeffrey Epstein. Folks, even the media knows that's not true. There's been a lot of stuff that has been known for a while that isn't widely spoken about in the media because it's on the fringe, it's on the edge of what you can and cannot report publicly or discuss or even speculate about publicly. Just the same way that the media knew about the dossier for about 3 months before it became public to you. And BuzzFeed took it public. And then Jake Tapper, by the way, who played a huge role, then reported the BuzzFeed report on CNN to bring it into the mainstream. That's how they do these things. But much the way that they knew about this thing, John McCain called everybody trying to get them to run the story, Democrats as well. They didn't. And you didn't know about it. The same thing's been true in that same mold, in that same fashion. This has been true that people have known for years that Donald Trump had this fallout with Jeffrey Epstein. He believed it was over perhaps the inappropriate use of Donald Trump's employees. All right. Which then there were rumors that maybe Epstein couldn't be trusted and Trump was very protective of his people. So he kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. That's the story. That's the story people have been talking about for a while. Nobody ever believed that Donald Trump was on Epstein Island banging young girls, guys. This is a man who Hollywood to DC knew was running around with every hot woman he could possibly want that has any loose connection to NBC at all. Like, this is not, and that, by the way, you can have your own problem with that. Me personally, like, oh, wow, a rich white man likes pretty women. Oh, break the printing press. Who cares? Like, it doesn't matter. That's between him and his wife and his God. I don't, that's not, and I'm certainly nobody to friggin' judge. I mean, so like, that's never been a thing, and people knew about that. So these like innuendos that there was going to be this mass revelation about Donald Trump is just ridiculous and bullshit to all of us who knew. Now we know Ghislaine Maxwell has sat down with Trump's DOJ, and I mean, she flatly told the lawyers and the interviewers that Donald Trump never did anything inappropriate. So that's that. So Democrats are going to keep going on and on about it, and they're going to have to find other angles. Here's another angle. This is a mistake that's going to haunt him from the first Trump administration, and why he had to be so careful with this going into it, especially if you're going to invite influencers to the White House and roll out the binders that say part 1 and like lead people like Benny Johnson on and Jack Posobiec on, right? Who now, if you can look at Benny's like a huge reason why younger voters think it's cool to be a Trump supporter. And this is the thanks Benny Johnson gets. Go read his replies. I mean, you guys are you're killing yourselves. You're killing yourselves. You stabbed, well, I'll leave it there. But because Donald Trump chose to hire the man who cut the sweetheart deal with Epstein in the first place, he was always going to have to be very careful. And I'm not saying that he's wrong to do. I'm not saying that, right? Especially in the first administration, he had to deal with the Senate, and they wouldn't confirm people. He was trying to play the game. He should know better now, but he was trying to play the game and trying to unite people. Back in his first administration, he got stabbed in the back for it. But all the more reason why he should know you have to play your own game, a different game this time. And it seems to many of us that he hasn't learned that in many respects. All right. But in any event, here we go. So now there's this document that comes out, and I'm going to show you. First of all, if you saw my Twitter feed, you know how I feel about this. I don't ever want to be lectured by any of these people, whether you're on the right or the left or whatever. When we talk about realpolitik or whatever it may be, and you try to phrase the world in this fake moralism, I never want to be lectured about this one's a good guy and this one's a bad guy, and oh, you're anti-American, oh, you're pro-Russian, oh, you're anti-Jewish, you're an anti-Semite. Like, kiss my ass with that stuff. I'm over it. Realpolitik has no place. There's no place for moralism in statecraft and realpolitik. None of us are good guys. However, we can hold our own governments to different standards. When Acosta was asked about his role in the prosecution, or the friggin' pathetic excuse for a prosecution over Jeffrey Epstein, and he cut that deal, he said, and it is widely reported, that I was told that it's above my pay grade and that he belongs to the intel community. And he tried to walk it back when he was in front of a microphone for a department briefing. He tried to walk it back because that's what people do. You always want to pay attention to when people have no incentive to lie and are in a position to tell the truth. So when he was in the position to tell the truth, he told the truth, which is that he was told that Epstein was an asset of some kind, and that it was above his pay grade, and that even though he didn't like it, he was going to have to deal with it and move the F on. Now we find these documents, okay? And let me just make sure I had tipped this correctly. I want to give credit to where credit's due. I mean, it's not his, but he did post it to X. So let me make sure I get him. There it is. Wall Street Math. All right, on X. This is the kind of stuff we're going to start to see. You might remember that when Epstein was prosecuted in 2008 and was not arrested 10 years later. And I guess we're going to go over on the show today, which we're going to do a couple of times. And I got to get into that, why we're going to have a little mess up with shows Locals, you know a little bit more, but Monday I got to go in for that procedure. Locals, I cannot put it off anymore. And after whatever the results of that procedure are, that will determine what the hell's going to happen with the next couple of weeks. We'll see. And then I have to travel. Of course, I got to go to Tennessee on the 19th, I think. Again, I'm screwing up here. Where's Laura, who can tell me exactly when some of those are hammered out? But I have to balance some of the stuff I got to deal with myself and obligations I already made. So one is I got another one on Friday, so I'll probably have to hold the show tomorrow instead, but we'll see how it's going. And either way, I'm going over, if that's cool with you guys, because there's just too much to talk about in between these periods. All right, so let me just cut to the chase here. It's beginning to look like a lot of things that were said about Jeffrey Epstein are true. What Costa said about Epstein, what he was told about Epstein is true. We just didn't know who it was for, and now we do. And that when Donald Trump was elected president, maybe the same agency that was trying to frame him for a crime he didn't commit or one that didn't even exist, all at the behest of Hillary Clinton and his political opponents and enemies, may have been trying to cover their ass. So they did something called burning. All right. When you are an asset, you can get away with a lot of stuff as long as you keep being of value to the government that you have engaged in a deal with. At some point, if you lose your usefulness or you become a liability, they will do what's called burning. They will burn you. And in this case, it's beginning to look like Jeffrey Epstein was burned. Maybe they got a little bit afraid. They didn't know what Donald Trump was going to do. They knew that they were coming after him with what is a seditious conspiracy. I mean, those people committed treason. I mean, let's not dance around it. They did. And they didn't, maybe if you're them and you are concerned maybe with going after this guy and then he'll use whatever he can at his disposal to then come back at you, maybe allowing a pedophile ring to continue for 10 years because he was giving you information is something he could have used, but he didn't. Ultimately, he didn't. But I mean, I don't know this to be sure. I'm just saying, like, knowing enough of what I do, I'm beginning to strongly suspect that Epstein was burned because they could no longer afford to protect him. And whatever information perhaps he was giving them was no longer valuable. All right. So here we have a document from the FBI. No, it's small. I will read it to you. Oh my God. No, I will not. I will zoom in so you can see it. And I am going to read it for you too, but I want you to be able to see what it says here. Okay. And look at the date, which you can see is 9/17 dated by hand. All right. Or 9/19 dated, but it looks very unclear. 2008. All right. And I'm going to read the whole thing, even though there is a red box around it. When somebody is prosecuted and it is a bad prosecution, all right, drug dealers, right? If you were prosecuted for some kind of insider trading thing, for instance, maybe, or political stuff, even if they came at you because of your political support for Donald Trump, maybe a bunch of different things, but certainly they figure out a way to twist the statute so that you are eligible for something called civil asset forfeiture. I guess if you're a pedophile ring runner and you are giving information to the U.S. government, you are at no risk whatsoever of civil asset forfeiture. If, however, you are selling drugs to make a living because you got to put food on the table, they're going to throw it at you. Which one's more evil? I mean, they're both not good, but which one is more evil, right? Let me read this whole thing to you. 9/11/08. Case agent advised writer that Epstein is currently being prosecuted by the state of Florida and is complying with all conditions of his plea with the state of Florida. Epstein has also Oh, and by the way, this idea that he did is ludicrous. The sweetheart deal allowed him to so-called go to work. He barely spent time. He basically slept at the prison. He was free to do whatever he wanted during the day. Just so you guys understand how Epstein's prosecution went. He got a deal you would never get, especially for touching multiple underage girls that would freaking lock you up. There was just a pedo ring busted by me. Unfortunately, one of our damn neighbors was a part of it. I mean, neighbor, I say neighbor, he doesn't like live right next door, but we do know who they are. And we just found out now that he was in fact the rat. So they're running around rounding up the ring now where I live in my area. The police are running around, they're rounding up the pedo ring. Apparently it's like 5 to 8 of them. And what we found out is that the son of someone we all know, I don't know if he was exploited, but that's what the family's arguing because he's like mentally deficient, but irrelevant. He agreed to play a role in helping him round up his friends. For that, he got a lighter prosecution, but he will still do a year in jail. He's not allowed to leave, and he got a very good defense. By the way, his brother works for the New York Times. Yep. Anywho, he got a great representation. He will not be allowed to leave during the day. He will not be passing go and collecting $200. Jeffrey Epstein was allowed to sleep at the jail and then run around and do every deviant thing that Jeffrey Epstein liked to do, including make his millions and millions and millions during the day. Nobody else would have gotten this deal. So when they say he's complying with the terms of his deal, like how could you break or violate the terms of Epstein's deal? It's ridiculous. The only way you could is if you didn't show back up to the jail to go to bed at night. That's it, guys. All right. All right. This is the key sentence, honestly. Epstein has also provided information to the FBI as agreed upon. Case agent advised that no federal prosecution will occur in this matter as long as Epstein continues to uphold his agreement with the state of Florida. Before we even go any further, Epstein's lawyer is a liar. Unless I'm misunderstanding what he argued when he was coming out and, defending Israel and defending everybody else, saying that I was his defense attorney and nobody asked him to do anything like that. Well, in fact, the U.S. government did. And he gave whatever he needed to the U.S. government. I'll read it again. Epstein has also provided information to the FBI as agreed upon. All right. After I take a real quick sip of water, I'm going to tell you why that sentence pisses me off beyond. Like, not that I'm surprised, but think about what it means. Not only did the U.S. government, our government, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation, who is increasingly beginning, in these years, post 9/11 years specifically, to overstep their original mission, to engage in behavior and investigate areas that really are not their purview, that belong to other agencies. Okay. Give me John Dillinger back. I'm not kidding. I mean, that's what they were supposed to run around and chase interstate commerce crime. I mean, John Dillinger could never be as dangerous as the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I'm at I think I'm just basically falling in line with where the core of Trump's vote is, like his voting bloc. Like, just defund it all. I don't care if Dan Bongino is the head of this, the director of that, and Cash, lovely man, cool dude. He's one guy. They're two guys. I mean, that's it, together. There's no way that they can reform this. Folks, this is evil. The U.S. government first of all, was already evil enough that the U.S. government cut this deal to begin with. All right. Allowing a man who committed the crimes that he did to get such a a deal without giving. And this is why. Now we know why they didn't consult the victims' families, which never happens, especially in a crime like this and of this magnitude. The prosecutors will never agree to a plea deal without speaking to the victims' families first. It just doesn't happen, folks. It doesn't happen. So don't tell me he was giving information about some like dude he plays golf with or something like that committed some white collar crime. He basically agreed. And by the way, who got prosecuted as a result of what the information Epstein gave? Who got prosecuted? You don't know. I don't know. So it looks like here, the federal government, the United States government, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, let Jeffrey Epstein cut this sweetheart deal, this evil sweetheart deal, and let Jeffrey Epstein continue to be a monster rapist for 10 whole years after this, so he could give them information to blackmail other people, which is why nothing in Washington ever changes. This is their way. This is the way of the FBI and has been the way of the FBI since it was established and run by Hoover. This was Hoover's way. He didn't prosecute people with the information in those files. He made sure those people first preserved and grew the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And secondly, did not become a threat to Washington, the Washington ruling class. And when he thought they did, he resorted to blackmail with information that are crimes, so, that they committed crimes or sometimes just embarrassing stuff. But he didn't prosecute them. He just threatened to ruin them with that information. So is that an agent of justice, or is that just another corrupt piece of shit in the annals of history? Because that's what it looks like the FBI did in the case of Jeffrey Epstein. If you know about these things, unless there's another plausible explanation somebody wants to share with me, I don't think there is. I'm fairly certain that's what happened. And until somebody shows me something else, you'd have to be a naive idiot to suspect it's something else. So tell me more about how evil Vladimir Putin is. Tell me more about how we're the righteous hand of God around the world. This is shameful. Just get rid of it all. Let me just get rid of it all. So what? Put another agency. Listen, folks. I'm a Second Amendment believer. I'm fairly confident. I am competent in various ways to defend myself and my family. I don't freaking need them. I don't need to fund this level of evil bullshit. I hope you got your money's worth. Explain it to his victims. It's just gross. So, Mr. Vice President, you better take how the other part of the country, meaning everyone outside of where you are right now, you better take into account how they're going to see this stuff when you're making your strategy. Because I can guarantee you that's how it's going to look. Before all of this came down, by the way, nobody believed that Donald Trump had anything to do with the Epstein cover up or, was on some whatever kind of client list, whether it's a physical, whatever they parsing this definition of client list. Nobody believed, no voter believed. Everybody believed Bill Clinton was on it. Everybody was like licking their chops to see who else was on it, but nobody believed seriously, unless they were rabid liberals with TDS, nobody believed Donald Trump was going to be one of those people. And now, according to Mark, and I believe Mark, he's a trustworthy pollster, that is the case. Hopefully for the president, some of this new information will alleviate some of that, and it probably will. We'll see. But going forward, it doesn't mean they're going to think he's not trying to cover up something else. And when stuff like this comes out, they're going to think, of course, they're going to think that, oh man, Trump is doing what all other presidents do. He's protecting the institutions. He's not going after the ruling class. He's trying to play ball with them. That's what it looks like. They're not wrong. All right. This is just gross. All right. Let's get into redistricting. And by the way, links to sponsors are in the show, in the thing below. I do not have to read them today, so we're going right through. Although, again, the public polling project that we'll bust your chops about, it's the and I don't know if you guys, I never really brought this up with you guys. I don't know if you like. I just want to recognize everybody who does contribute to it, and I know there's probably enough people who don't want to be singled out, but trust me when I say I have thought about, like vocally recognizing people who do contribute to the public polling project, whether it's like $5 or $500. But I figured there's a reason why a lot of people pick that anonymous thing and they want to choose to remain anonymous. Just know that we absolutely do recognize you and value you for it. All right. That's why I don't do that though. I don't want to blow anybody up like that. Okay. Let's get into, I want to know where I want to start here. Challenges that are indeed in estimating it. What has changed? I think we need to start with what has changed. Yes. Okay. I'm going to put that up and then we get my little charts ready here. Couple of things that you need to know when we're talking about this conversation about redistricting. There's multiple layers on when we talk about who is being underrepresented in the U.S. House of Representatives. There are multiple layers of this, and I almost feel like something like this needs to be a series because we have to talk about some foundational stuff before we even move on, and then get into the real weeds, even district by district, about why, for instance, our estimates, because I get a lot of questions from reporters, why are your estimates higher than others that we have seen? And I'm going to share to you why I do think when we estimate the number of House seats that would change based on something like just not counting illegal residents or illegal aliens, our estimates are on the higher end. It's very simple explanation, but whatever range you're using, it is a fair and I think undeniable, not debatable statement of fact when you say the following. If illegal aliens were not counted in the census, Democrats would not be able to win control of the House of Representatives. It would take a huge blue wave to do that, even under the current framework of how redistricting was conducted this last time and probably will in the future. All right, before we get to that though, and I will get more into the weeds on it, but before we get to that, I do just want to say, talk about the politics of this. First and foremost, what Republicans are doing to cut through the noise, what Republicans are doing is now it's not gerrymandering or trying to take away someone's vote or disenfranchise any voters. Voters are disenfranchised under the current system. That is just true. They are trying to fix it or counter it. Here's the problem with that. When you do something after the fact, in the case of Texas, you look like you're a sore loser. And you look like, again, you are once again reacting. In politics, when you are reacting, you're on the defensive. When you're on the defensive, you're losing. You're losing optically, you're losing the message, and you'll lose the ballot box over it. You have to be on the ball. You can't cry after the fact that it didn't go your way. They had every opportunity to make sure that it did, in fact, go their way. The census changed the electoral college count, made it much easier for the inevitable Republican nominee, who turned out to be Donald Trump, to win the presidency. It made it easier compared to 2020, compared to 2016. And yet in the U.S. House, it got harder for Republicans to maintain control or win control of the House of Representatives after the redistricting effort. So there's like the truth of this and what's going on. Then there's the politics of it. And the politics just look bad because no matter what you say or what you try to, how righteous you try to sound now, that you're trying to right a gross wrong, no one's going to see it like that, or at least too many will not see it like that. It is what it is, and it's still worth doing. I'm not saying that. It's just that for once, it would be nice if Republicans were competent at their jobs and didn't end up in this defensive position as always. And they are, because they're stupid. And the people that they hire to do these things are retards. And worse, they are simpletons who think they're smart. And it's like the worst thing ever. You ever run into somebody who it's bad enough that they have no idea what the hell they're talking about, but they actually think they do. I remember this, and somebody just asked me about it the other day. I was talking about, remember the situation with Piers Morgan? This debate wasn't even a debate. It was like this loud fight. Like you are a British fake citizen, because there are no citizens in Britain. I love you guys. I love you, my British friends. But you're not a citizen as the United States defines and has created the term in the modern word. A citizen. Yes, there were citizens in Rome. There's a recognition of personhood on a different level with the term citizen in the United States. By the way, this matters when we talk about redistricting. That is not recognized by other governments around the world, including Western governments that are so-called democracies. Our inalienable rights are codified, and the government has to recognize them. And people like Piers Morgan, for instance, they don't understand that because they're not one of us. And that's just true. And they're arguing this idea of the right to self-defense and why we have a Second Amendment. And the idiot has no idea what he's talking about. And he's not the only one who ever did it to me, but he's like, look, assault rifles, something like, stop talking about assault rifles. What the hell are you like that word? You don't even know what that word means. All right. That's not an assault rifle. It's a semi-automatic rifle. And he goes, it's assault rifle. It's right in the name. AR. And I basically replied, you're a stupid idiot. AR stands for Armalite, the original manufacturer of that model of firearm, you stupid jackass. All right. So is it what I'm talking about? People who think they know something but don't are bad enough. But then for them to be arrogant about it and not know they're simpletons is the worst. One of them, who happens to be a congressman now, by the way, we got into this with, and I know David's probably watching the show. I had to argue with one of the president. The president loved this guy. He still loves him. And he really thought that the rhino effort in California to change delegate allegation in California was in service of Donald Trump, where a few of us, David, by the way, played a big role in that, had to make them understand and go to war with Harmeet Dillon over it, because she was either lying or was or herself was full of shit and not competent enough to understand. But that plan was to maximize the share of delegates so Ron DeSantis could take an outside share of the delegates because they weren't represented. Trump's voters weren't being properly represented. And the winner-take-all style was much more beneficial to Donald Trump. Then they believed that Ron DeSantis would do better in urban areas. That, of course, was never going to happen. And Brian, you were wrong. So again, these are the kind of people that Republicans put up to do these things, and they don't even know what they're really doing. So fix it first, so you don't have to look like you're playing defensive and you're acting like a sore loser later or after the fact. Doesn't matter. Democrats run across state lines. They did this with Wisconsin as well, if you remember. They're doing it now. They didn't, this is resorting to this in Texas to avoid it. The bottom line is, do it right the first time, and you don't have to worry about any of this. You can be the champion of the vote, right? The sacred right to be represented. Be smart enough to get out in front of it. Because the fact of the matter here is, I can go over all of these groups that are underrepresented. And very simply, there's two layers of this. One is, and I'm looking at the time, one is without a doubt, Democrats and their commissions. They're fake independent commissions. By the way, even in red states, Texas is a great example. You will not find a blue state where there are traitor Democrats that will help Republicans redraw lines that are more beneficial to Republicans. You will find red states everywhere where there are traitor Republicans who will help Democrats redraw lines that are more favorable to Democrats. So that's just a problem that the voter has to deal with in elections, and they've not done that, a good enough job of that. It's just true, all right? And Donald Trump is one man, can't do it all alone. You really need to do this everywhere. And together, I would say the simplest explanation of what their plan was and what they want to do is not to just make it harder for Republicans to win control, because before this last map, it is true that Republicans did have a structural advantage in the House map, and they could lose the popular vote by 1 to 2 points, still maintain control of the House without a doubt. And Democrats could win it by 8 or 10 and, win control with like 10 seats, 15 seats. So Democrats did have a disadvantage at that point, if you don't take into consider the second layer of all this. But now the plan was to undo that, and also recognizing the realities of the Electoral College and how harder it would be for Democrats to win the presidency. Do not allow that to happen in the House. And what is that? It means don't allow working class voters to be properly represented in elections. More specifically, do not allow white working class voters to be represented in elections, and to do whatever it is that you could do to basically wash out their vote, to basically dilute their voting power. Albuquerque, New Mexico is a great example. They took a chunk of Albuquerque to erase the working class rural vote. So this is the kind of thing they did, and they did it everywhere. In Texas, there's no doubt that Texas is not well represented. California, which Democrats are threatening to further, Jerry, if Republicans go through with this in Texas, is actually skewed more toward Democrats than even the statewide vote would suggest. And there's a lot of reasons for this. One in general that I'm going to go over today, but there are several. And, one of them is that we don't take into consideration factors anymore. And these independent commissions do not, that really originally were intended to be considered when drawing congressional districts. We talked about, everyone knows the 3/5 compromise, right? Everyone knows about that. But geography, culture, right? These things were also supposed to be considered. And why? Because our founders recognized that if you just used, however you cobble together a majority, if you just use majorities, whether it's majorities of race or majorities of cultures or majorities of beliefs or religions, if you did that to destroy the voice of the minority, at some point, the voice of the minority is going to get violent. And they're going to realize that the situation doesn't work for them anymore. The situation doesn't. This system of government doesn't represent them at all, and they will resort to bloodshed, because that's what happens. I mean, we always feel like uncomfortable talking about these things, but we should, because this is how the founders thought, and they did because they were great students of history and they know it's true. But that's one of the reasons. But the real reason, folks, and especially in the situation of California and Texas, there's the real reason why these people are underrepresented. And the truth of it is, if you consider the other layer to all of this, every American citizen is being underrepresented. Everyone. White. Oh, and by the way, when they did that, they didn't count on non-white, non-college, like Rui Teixeira warned them about. And we polled, we constantly identified in these polls, they got lucky because a lot of them did not also vote Republican. They just voted for Donald Trump. So they got lucky down ballot where they left. There were tons of black men who said, Donald Trump, that guy, I'm leaving it blank. And I'm just going to vote for Donald Trump. That happened a lot. Look at Michigan. We've been over the case of Mike Rogers a bunch. What do you think that undervote is? That's them. So not just black men, but they are part of this group. They didn't count on everyone who is working class. And by the way, college educated non-whites also shifted to Donald Trump. They didn't count on that. But the truth is, they're not the only ones. All Americans, whether they have a college degree, no college degree, they're white, they're black, they're Asian, they're Hispanic, they make less than $30,000 or they make $200,000 or more. We are all, as U.S. citizens, as American citizens, we are all being underrepresented because everybody knows where I'm going with this. We count illegal immigrants. The U.S. Census is used for representation, questions of representation, whether or not this state gets another seat in U.S. Congress, right? Whether or not they're going to get more electoral college votes, for instance, or less, or they're going to lose a seat. And then also, when these independent commissions and legislatures draw these districts, and California, I was involved with, the iterations were ridiculous over and over and over. And by the way, they changed by day based on who called the commission and leaned on them. One day it was the governor. It was. The next day it was Kevin McCarthy. And everybody had an axe to grind. Everybody offered somebody something. It was gross. It was a disgusting process. Redistricting should be in the hands of the legislature as it was intended, no matter how hard it is and no matter what people in black robes say. I say this to the people in black robes: go f yourself. We can vote in or out members of our own legislature, and if we don't like the maps and the iterations they are producing, they can be held to account and they can face the wrath of the voter. And then next time, somebody else will consider it when they go to draw something that's, a scam. When it comes to these independent commissions, there's nobody to hold them accountable. It's like a special interest. What did Jefferson call it? Oh, I got to get it. Like where it's just like a bidding system for rent seekers. It's like that, the equivalent of that with these independent commissions. And it's gross. So here we are. Don't tell me, look at Sean Trendy was part of it in Virginia. How'd that go? I mean, Sean, it's true. This is the job of the people who were elected. Your neighbors who may serve as your state senator or state house member. This is their job, because ultimately this is the job of the people to hold their own government accountable. And you can't do that if you have these independent commissions. And that's why for years they've basically done whatever the hell they wanted, because no voter has been taking this obligation seriously. And the concept of counting illegal immigrants is a new concept. It's a new concept. It was not done for the first 200 years of this country. It's new. And it went hand in hand with the Kennedy plan to not trust Americans anymore. So we have to import a whole new underclass to vote Democrat. Now, this is all compounded, very badly compounded. All right. By the way, I do want to show you the states of where illegal immigrants are, and give me a second. But this problem is all compounded terribly by the fact that it's difficult to count the number of illegal immigrants that are in the country. And when you're asking, well, Rich, why is your estimate like an average of 27 seats when most other people agree that it's 20? The answer is very simple. One, I think we have a much more realistic estimate of not only how many illegal immigrants are in the country, but also where they are. And this is a big deal because the census itself just admitted they don't effing know. A lot of people probably don't even know this. It is August. In March, and I'm going to read something to you soon. In March, the Commerce Department changed their methodology for estimating the population of illegal immigrants in this country. I am simply reflecting those changes, whereas others are continuing to use flawed analysis. And by the way, we have our own projections, and I know that the left hates this organization, but I think they're probably, I think it's possible, entirely possible, that they're actually on the conservative side of things. However, we try to be conservative in these estimates, and I'm telling you, 20 seats, fine. That's a low end. Democrats are going to lose probably more like 25 to 27 seats if we don't even have these debates and methodology and how many there are, and we just stop counting them. And by the way, another reason why I said it is true that Republicans are disadvantaged and that the working class, all of this was designed to disadvantage the working class, is simple. We're talking about Texas and California. Many other states were undercounted by the census, and they all of them, you can make an argument, negatively impacts the Republican vote. North Carolina, by the way, right here, North Carolina, Eastern North Carolina, everybody knows it was undercounted. Everyone knows Mecklenburg and the surrounding area was overcounted, overrepresented. We had a map that was agreed upon by both houses of the legislature and Roy Cooper as the governor at the time, and they got their crazy liberal court to overturn a map that was already agreed upon. And that map did take into consideration what everyone in the Capitol knew, which was that Eastern North Carolina was undercounted. All right. So if the Democrats want to open up this can of worms instead of just dealing with the issue of Texas, then it might get away from them really, really quick if there are more Republican states and legislatures willing to do this. All right. First and foremost, with the best estimate we possibly can, let's look at where, just to drive this point home, let's look at where illegal immigrants reside and how many estimate, right, based on these estimates. And conceding and telling you that you should concede yourself that these estimates are probably way too low. Okay. Here are all the states. It goes up to 19. And why is that important? Why did I care about that? Excuse me. Because this is when we were having the argument before the census. The Supreme Court screwed over the country, basically saying Donald Trump needed to do this. Not that he doesn't have the right to remove illegals from the census, but that he needed to do it through a different procedure, which was a total load of shit. All right. I mean, it was it was such a punt, and they screwed the country. They screwed the Supreme Court that day, diluted the value of U.S. citizenship for every American citizen in the country. Democrat, Republican, independent, third party, white, black, Asian, Hispanic, purple, whatever, old, young, rich, poor, down the line. As you can see, California had, according to these fake estimates, and it's from the U.S. Census Bureau. That's where California, this is a chart that was made by California Degrees, who took it from the U.S. Census. Leading up to the redistricting effort, this was the last count. Not only are Republicans underrepresented based on their share of the statewide vote, look at how many illegal residents compared to the next one, who's Texas, which, by the way, makes the Republican effort even more justified. Next after that is New York. So let's say, all right, just to give you an idea why I do think it's closer to 25, 27 than 20. California, obvious case, right? But then you have Texas, where Republicans are trying to address now. That would net them about 5 other seats, okay? You're not just talking about 2, 3 states where this is a problem. It's 5 in Texas alone. And that's not even addressing the full problem. New York, areas where like Westchester, like where Molinaro lost, Mark Molinaro would never have the district that he had to lose in drawn the way that it was drawn if they did not count the illegals that were in the state of New York. And again, this is very low. They want you to believe it's only about 7 million in the state of New York. Do you believe that? 24 million in the state of California. In fact, California wouldn't even be dealing with this many congressional districts right now. Forget about that many, because yes, they've lost electoral college power and punching power, but it would have been way worse. Why? It's very simple. The state of California, not only in the last decade or so, but in the last 15 years, right? 16 years now, has had no net domestic population growth. None. Zero. In fact, in several of those years, it reversed. Why? State to state migration. States like Florida, Nevada, Arizona, they have been destination spots for actual American citizens who have left the state of Florida. And by the way, it answered that question after 2010, at least. Before 2010, you could argue that there were blue state voters moving to red states and turning red states more blue. You could make that argument prior to 2010. You cannot make it from 2010 and beyond. In truth, what we're seeing, which is why you saw registration changes in North Carolina. That's another destination area for places like New York and New Jersey. But as far as California, that's why you've seen Nevada and Texas, like without the people who fled California to move to Texas, Ted Cruz would have lost against Beto O'Rourke. True. It's a fact. All right. So overall, in the entire country, considering how much of a problem California is to the overall share, the United States alone has had almost no net population growth domestically itself. California is worse, of course, but this is a problem for the entire country. So even if they were to stay stagnant compared to California, if we did not count illegal immigrants, California would have lost significantly more as far as our electoral representation nationally. So House seats, how many electoral college votes the states have, it would have lost considerably more than it even has. All right. So that would have done extreme damage to their ability to take control of the House of Representatives. So just between those few states, you're looking at about, you could argue you're looking at around 13 seats, 12, 13 seats. Adding New York, Florida, the case of Florida is weird because they think and vote and have vote preference that is very different than the illegal population everywhere else. It's crazy. It's like that's why they ended up in Florida to begin with. I don't know. I think it's worth studying, but it's not really. I mean, if you remove them from the count, then yes, it's still going to help Republicans, although Florida is pretty red now, guys, or it's pretty Trumpy red. It can have some plus 15, 20 gubernatorial elections. But, when it comes to the presidential vote or Senate votes or the statewide vote, you take Trumpism out of that equation, and that's going to be a problem. So anyway, it was a destination state for these other states from state to state migration up until the second year of Ron DeSantis' term. Ron DeSantis took a lot of credit for, look at all these people who moved to Florida and I turned the state so red. Bullshit. That was work that happened before. In fact, Miami-Dade lost population after your second year in office every year consecutively since. So, not true. But in any event, I mean, you're looking at making the state, what, 1 seat or 2 seats redder, depending on how aggressive you are. I really don't think it would have that big of an impact. Arizona, it would. Virginia is a big deal. And on. We can go down the list, but you can see where these people, I keep saying, but you can see where illegal residents, otherwise illegal immigrants who now reside in the U.S., you can see where they were leading up until 2019. And the difference in the estimates on where we're talking, is it 5 seats in California? Is it 5 seats in Texas? Well, that depends on how you count how many illegals are actually in the country. And let me show you what I mean. All right. Here is FAIR, which every leftist cannot stand. All right. The Federation for American Immigration Reform. This is the estimate from 2010 to 2024, along with what it would have been with the revisions to the methodology made by the U.S. Census Bureau. All right. My God, it's 3:08 already. All right. Bear with me. That's why I'm okay. All right. Now, it matters that these revisions were applied only from July 1st, 2021 to July 30th of 2022. Why? It was already done. So how they already, the numbers, folks, the numbers that they already used to redraw, to redistrict, is too late. You understand what I'm saying? Like, so even though they changed their methodology, it's the new numbers are not what is being used. All right. So with that in mind, I'm going to read a lot here, but bear with me, okay? Here they're going to talk about the challenges here. Estimating the size, distribution, and characteristics of the illegal alien population is an inexact science. That's why it would be great if you just didn't count them. Then we'd have a greater idea, wouldn't we? It's like dark matter. You can't see it. It's hard to estimate, but you know it's there based on the math. You can count its absence. Well, we would be able to count the absence of the illegal resident population in a census, folks. Then it would give us a much better idea, or at least a better estimate of what it truly is based on the newer methodology or a more refined methodology. And this is something the Trump administration, instead of trying to, I'm not saying stop what you're doing in Texas. I'm saying walk and chew gum at the same damn time. The methods used by those claiming to have calculated a definitive figure should be viewed skeptically, as there is no completely reliable source of information on illegal aliens. Get this, if you think, and you are always constantly told by, and let me just make sure it's not zoomed in. Yeah, you're constantly told, folks, by Fox News, even by CNN, if you read CNN, by any of these other media sources from right to left, except for alternative media, you're constantly told these estimates and they're delivered to you as if they're gospel. When in truth, the federal government itself argues over how to count these people and what is the real size of this population residing illegally in the United States. The Department of Homeland Security, DHS, only, and it's loosely, counts foreign nationals who enter and leave the United States in a lawful manner. And its illegal alien population estimates remain unhelpful due to underestimating the size of the population and utilizing outdated numbers. In truth, we do not know exactly how many people cross the border illegally and evade immigration authorities, nor can anyone accurately quantify overstays or gotaways. We can only estimate these figures based on annual and monthly census data. This is a major problem. Most of the current estimates regarding the total number of illegal aliens are based on U.S. Census Bureau data. Unfortunately, far too many of these tallies presume that essentially all unlawful migrants are willing to respond to demographic questionnaires and that they provide accurate information to federal officials. Well, you and I, everyone watching this show right now, you know that's bullshit. You know there's a problem with these, with legal residents responding and participating in these surveys, as their presence in the United States is the result of a violation of law. Many illegal aliens understandably see no personal benefit in revealing any information about their nativity or true immigration status. Therefore, when asked about how, when, and why they enter the United States, illegal aliens have a strong motive to either lie, claiming they are lawful immigrants or citizens, or they refuse to respond at all. Most reputable demographers and researchers have long understood that there is widespread and systematic undercounting in the U.S. in the Census Bureau's estimate of the foreign-born population because it is difficult to estimate the portion of that population attributable to illegal immigrants. Understandably, many illegal aliens are reluctant to engage with government surveys, and many do not even live in the residential addresses within the survey pool. Because of this simple fact, older estimates frequently assumed there was a lower response rate of illegal aliens as a portion of the foreign-born population. Indeed, even before the Biden era, census publications frequently acknowledge that certain population groups, particularly sections of the foreign-born, have under-coverage rates of 10 to nearly 20%. Wow. That's big, guys. The undercount of the foreign-born population came under greater scrutiny during the Biden era, when a massive inflow of illegal aliens in just 4 short years through entirely new channels made it even harder for Census Bureau surveys to capture the true size of the population. The current population survey, for example, is conducted through 2 4-month surveys with an 8-month break in between, and only serves as a subset of residential addresses. However, many aliens allowed in by the Biden administration lived in migrant shelters, specifically designated hotels, homeless shelters, or even on the streets, moving frequently between these. Census surveys were simply not designed with the chaos of places like the infamous Roosevelt Hotel in mind. And this is why my estimate is bigger. FAIR and many other organizations recognize that a significant disconnect between official immigration data like border apprehensions, asylum applications, and immigration parolees, and the Census Bureau's lagging and seemingly incomplete estimate of the foreign-born population. With these discrepancies in mind, our organizations began to rely on other methods to estimate net illegal immigration for their own purposes. And while you will hear on the media, and I'm breaking there before I say this because you're going to hear it in a second. While you will hear all of these people from Fox News and everywhere else tell you that they have this relatively certain number, and organizations like FAIR are right wing, they are not the only ones doing this. And that's what makes this entire argument so disingenuous. In July of 2024, just a year ago, folks, the Congressional Budget Office published a significantly higher estimate than the Census Bureau, estimating net illegal immigration of 9.9 million from 21 to 26. Not overall, folks, from 21 to 26. By the way, since redistricting took place, based mostly on DHS data. Financial institutions made their own estimates, with JP Morgan noting in early of 25 that undercount among illegal aliens could cause unforeseen pressure on the housing market. News organizations such as the New York Times compared the situation to the 1990s, noting that both then and now, undercount becomes much worse when migration situation rapidly changes. And you guys remember that report? We actually read it on the show, but pointing out even then, that was a rare kind of report from the New York Times. When you read the consensus, when you read articles that rely on the consensus around these numbers, they don't recognize that at all. They take the official undercount and they assume it and they insinuate it and they make assumptions and presumptions and their arguments based on that information being correct, and it's not. Here we go. Kicker. In December of 2024, last Christmas, the Census Bureau admitted that net foreign migration to the U.S. was, quote, significantly higher than previous estimates. This admission was coupled by significant changes to the Census Bureau methodology to capture the sheer scope of the Biden administration's illegal immigration crisis, which previous survey methods had not accounted for. End of story. You get where I'm going with this? In particular, the Bureau made significant upward adjustments to assessment of the foreign-born population to account for the inflows of humanitarian migrants that its benchmark database had captured by the Bureau itself had missed. At the same time, the Bureau revised upward its raw estimates of net international migration for the previous 3 years, from July 1st to 21st. The report June 30th of 22. The Census Bureau reported it had missed net foreign migration of roughly 700,000, revising its estimate up by nearly 70%, 1 to 1.7. From the 1st of July of 22 to the June 30th date of 23, the Census Bureau revised its estimate up by an extraordinary 101.7%. Folks, that represented another 1.15 million people. Unbelievable. And its initial estimate was 1.13. Finally, from July 1st, 23 to June 30th, 24, the Census Bureau estimated that net international migration had reached nearly 2.8 million. That's a population high. That's a figure that's higher than the population of Chicago, an unprecedented total. And you may remember that when those revisions came out, we in fact discussed it on the show. And I said, that is a population that is more than Chicago. You guys remember that? Like literally verbatim. All right. So foreign-born immigrant estimates and benchmark data by categories. These are the estimate years dating back from 2010 to 2024. All right. Humanitarian migrants, students, temporary migrants, permanent immigrants, foreign-born immigrant adjusted, which is the blue dotted line, versus foreign-born immigrant unadjusted. Look at the spike. There are more than we expected. And that unfortunately, we can only really go back to 19 and the explosion, again, unfortunately, under Joe Biden. Surpassing the Ellis Island Great Wave era in the 1980s. I know it's getting late and I know we got to go. I just wanted to show you this real quick before we do. So here is the fair estimate. Illegal alien population in the U.S. since 2013 in the millions. Oh, wait, I got to pull that down so you guys can see that better. My bad. Why can't you see that better? Oh, my God. Hang on. It's clear. Oh, phenomenal. Hold on. Backdrop. Let me change the backdrop. Let me remove me. Remove. And just take that down for a second. Delete it. Put it back up. Let me just make this all about them. Oh, it doesn't make it much better, does it? How about that? You can generally see the gist here. Obviously, the vertical axis is in millions. Horizontal, of course, is the year. Under Joe Biden, it absolutely exploded. But I think this is a conservative estimate. And that's my point. I really do. I think it's a conservative estimate that they wanted to be able to say, look, I am, we're releasing this, but we're giving it. Yeah, I did see the avocation for amnesty. I mean, this is why those people are so stupid. And God love, I know him. I've known him for a while, Peppers. But this is why these people, they're out of their element. They're out of their depth. They're in over their heads, whatever else you want to say. The fact of the matter is, this is a do or die kind of thing for Republicans. Also, what makes it worse is that the public 100% supports this. So removing them from the estimates, they support it. So it makes little sense for them to, not push these changes and push them hard. In point of fact, the Supreme Court could say absolutely nothing. F all. If the U.S. House of Representatives passed a law today and the Senate signed off on it and it went to Donald Trump's desk. Thou shalt not count illegal aliens in the U.S. Census. End of story. And it would be upheld by the Supreme Court. It would, because they just wanted it to have some kind of public comment period and to go through it the right way, and whatever the right way is. They were looking to kick it. Well, call their bluff on it. Huge percentages of Democrats, whether they know or not that it's going to cost them over 20 seats in the U.S. House. Let me just say that, even though I'm telling you it's closer to 25, 27, but whatever. Even if, and 20 on the low end, I'll concede that, right? Even if they know or they don't know that, they still, huge percentages of them do not believe that illegals should be counted in the U.S. Census. Almost nobody who's a Republican does, and very, very few who refer themselves as independent do. Why? Because they understood what we led the show off with. You're diluting the value of American citizenship. You're diluting it. You're representing people who don't deserve to be represented, and you're underrepresenting people who have been getting the shaft for years. It makes it much harder for you to affect change in Washington when you think your government's going off on the wrong track. That is by design. And oh, by the way, you know what else is subjected to the U.S. Census? money. Federal appropriations. Who gets what? What district gets what? What state gets what? Our money deserves a fair and accurate count, and so do our elections. Whether it hurts Democrats or hurts Republicans or whatever, it has got to be that way. In this case, Republicans should be proactive instead of chasing their tail the way they're doing it in Texas now. And again, I'm not saying stop doing it. It's too damn late. You already fucked up. But you've got to learn to be more proactive. All right. All right. I mean, this is sure. Texas is fighting, but it's fighting punching backward. Lean into your friggin' punches. Lean into your political punches. Drop your shoulder. Use your hips. For Christ's sake. All right. Gotta go. 3:23. Thank you for hanging around over the time because I knew that was going to happen. All right. Again, links are in the description. You know them. You see them for the Public Polling Project 1775. You know the drill, guys. And again, one more time, thank you for everybody who does contribute to the Public Polling Project. I just have always been on the fence about whether or not to read them out loud, but I feel like sometimes I wish we did. But just know that obviously, you're valued, and share it for them while I do what you can. It's 3:24. I feel like I'm missing something, a date or something, but if I am, I'll let you know. All right. Thanks for watching Inside the Numbers. I'm out. Don't forget, if you like the videos, like them and share them far and wide. All right. All the best, everybody. See you soon. We're out.